You're watching Vinylic Puma Gaming. War. War never changes. Actually, guys, I'm sorry I said that. I know that's from Fallout, but I couldn't resist using it here. Today, I want to go ahead and discuss some Skyrim lore and theories with you guys, and I figured a good place to start might be the Skyrim Civil War between the Imperials and the Stormcloaks. I'm primarily going to be taking a side here and say that I think a Stormcloak victory would be better for Skyrim rather than an Imperial victory. I also want to discuss if the Stormcloaks did actually manage to win, could they keep Skyrim an independent country, or would it be swallowed back up by either the Empire or the ALDMERI Dominion? So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and discuss this civil war and why it's best that the Stormcloaks win it. The Stormcloaks believe that the Empire is a corrupt puppet government under the control of the ALDMERI Dominion. The Stormcloaks and Nordic people of Skyrim also really dislike the Empire because they don't allow them to worship TALOS, and this is ultimately the result of a treaty that the Empire signed with the ALDMERI Dominion. And as a result of this treaty, the ALDMERI agents, or the THALMOR, were granted the ability to kill TALOS worshippers by the Empire. In addition to not allowing the people to worship TALOS, the Empire was forced to pay some reparations, as well as disband the former guardians of the Emperor, the Blades. Honestly though, the Empire of Cyrodiil, as it is during the events of Skyrim, is a laughing joke and a shadow of its former self. The bloodline of the SEPTIM dynasty of emperors perished during the events of Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. This is important because TIBER SEPTIM, also referred to as TALOS, formed the Empire as we know it and managed to unite all of Tamriel under its banner. However, with the death of Martin Septim during the end of Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the Septim dynasty ended, and with Morrowind destroyed, the province of Blackmarsh left the Empire. Eventually, the Mede dynasty came into power and remains active during the events of Skyrim. Unfortunately, some point after Oblivion and before Skyrim, the Empire under the Mede line of emperors fell into conflict with the ALDMERI Dominion from Somerset Isles. The Dominion eventually took control of Valenwood and elsewhere. Then they set their sights on Cyrodiil, only to be barely beaten back by Titus Mede II's army, just about 30 years before the events of Skyrim. Fearing total annihilation and to conclude the war between the ALDMERI Dominion and the Septim Empire, the Mede dynasty signed the White Gold Concordat. This treaty ultimately abolished the Blades and forced the Empire to pay a sort of reparations to the ALDMERI Dominion. However, it had two severe consequences that divided the Empire going forward. First, the Empire lost HAMMERFELL. The White Gold Concordat required HAMMERFELL to join the ALDMERI Dominion. This led to the southern part of the region to rebel against the ALDMERI Dominion and resulted in the Second Treaty of Stormcloaks. Fortunately for the people of HAMMERFELL, the ALDMERI Dominion completely withdrew from the region. Unfortunately for the Empire, I think it's fair to suggest that the people of HAMMERFELL have no desire to rejoin the Empire and may resent the Empire for agreeing to give the Dominion their own territory. The second severe consequence is that the ALDMERI Dominion outlawed TALOS worship. As we've established earlier, TALOS was also known as TIBER SEPTIM, and he was the guy that actually formed the Empire as we know it. By agreeing to the White Gold Concordat, the Mede dynasty of emperors allowed the THALMOR to hunt down TALOS worshippers. To make things even worse, the Mede dynasty then published the TALOS Mistake, which was a document that outlined why worshipping TALOS was immoral and wrong. In my personal opinion, this decision to publish the TALOS Mistake makes the Empire illegitimate and unfit to rule, as they have turned their backs on TALOS, who was responsible for forming their empire in the first place. This decision and its enforcement pissed off a lot of Nords, and is ultimately what led up to the Stormcloak Rebellion in Skyrim. Now, it's fair to say that what remains of the Septim Empire is a disaster and will eventually crumble due to poor leadership and resentment brewed by the White Gold Concordat. If Skyrim were to achieve independence from the Empire, it's fairly safe to say that this would weaken the Empire further, leaving them with parts of just High Rock, Morrowind, and Cyrodiil. The Empire's puppet masters are the ALDMERI Dominion, an organization that has actively been trying to dismantle the Empire since the end of the events in Oblivion. Now, the Dominion is equally evil and awful at the same time, and while it's implied somewhat that some of the people of Windhelm are racist towards the Dark Elves and Argonians, we all know that the THALMOR believe that Elvenkind is superior to mankind. Prior to the events of Skyrim, the ALDMERI Dominion have been responsible for countless civil wars and other forms of grief within the Empire. The Dominion have also been responsible for dividing the people of Tamriel to meet their own ends and seek elven supremacy. It's worth noting too that the ALDMERI Dominion still wants to destroy the Empire, even after signing the White Gold Concordat with the Mede Dynasty. And it could be argued that the White Gold Concordat treaty they entered into with the Empire was a move to further divide and weaken the Empire. It's fair to suggest, albeit indirectly, that the ALDMERI Dominion started Skyrim Civil War between the Imperials and the Stormcloaks. The imprisonment of Ulfric after the Markarth incident made him greatly resent the Empire and led to the Stormcloak Rebellion. This was an outcome that the THALMOR wanted because the Dominion seeks to keep Skyrim in a perpetual state of war. The theory being that a divided Skyrim wouldn't be able to fight the ALDMERI Dominion effectively. They ultimately don't want either side to win, as a united Skyrim may be more difficult to conquer. From the Stormcloaks and Nord's point of view, the Empire betrayed them because they now resent and don't allow TALOS worship. Not to mention that they allowed an enemy foreign government, the ALDMERI Dominion, to actively seek out and hunt down those that worship TALOS. A foreign government that believes all mankind is inferior to Elvenkind and seeks to wipe out all human places of power in Tamriel. When you look at it this way, it's pretty easy to understand why the Stormcloaks hate both the Empire and the ALDMERI Dominion so much. Now that we understand the Stormcloaks' motivations and justifications for leaving the Empire, I'm going to talk about why Skyrim leaving the Empire would be a good idea. The first and most obvious thing would be that TALOS worship would once again become legal in Skyrim. There would be little fear of THALMOR or Imperial persecution for doing so. As I've established earlier, it's fair to suggest that TIBER SEPTIM or TALOS is or was the very soul of the Septim Empire. Not to mention that the worship of TALOS is particularly important to the many Nords of Skyrim and is the primary reason for the Stormcloak Rebellion. If TALOS worship was allowed, perhaps the Stormcloak Rebellion may have never even happened. It may also be fair to suggest that many of the people of Tamriel worship TALOS in secret, and when they see Skyrim as a free place to worship TALOS, perhaps other TALOS worshippers will migrate to Skyrim and have a further effect on the local economy in the region. In a certain sense, why should the Nords, or people of Skyrim that want to worship TALOS, be beholden to an Imperial government that doesn't care about or respect their values? An Imperial government that openly condemns the practice of worshipping TALOS, and even worse, they allow their enemy to enter their lands and kill people that choose to worship the god that they want to worship. Ultimately, the Empire under Titus Mede II is a joke and deserves to die. Speaking of the Empire, I believe its fall is inevitable, whether Skyrim attains independence or not. As mentioned previously, what was once the Septim Empire has been falling apart since the end of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion. The current Empire has been weakened by numerous civil wars, along with the war with the ALDMERI Dominion. The White Gold Concordat and its enforcement ultimately led to the loss of Hammerfell, which is now an independent province. All the White Gold Concordat managed to do was slow down the rate of decline, and in the process, it pissed off many of the Empire's constituents. Really, all this agreement did was make the Mede Dynasty last just a little bit longer instead of fizzling it out entirely upon what would have been the logical conclusion of the war between the ALDMERI Dominion and the Empire. All that's happening now is that the ALDMERI Dominion is purposely starting proxy wars in the Empire in an attempt to further weaken it. Look at the Stormcloak Rebellion as an example. Now, from my point of view, the citizens of Skyrim will have to fight the ALDMERI Dominion whether Skyrim becomes independent or not. I would say if Skyrim fights with the Dominion as a part of the Empire, they are going to lose. However, if they fight independently, there's a chance that they might win or trigger a Dominion withdrawal from the region, similar to what happened in HAMMERFELL. There is a major question to consider. If the Stormcloaks did manage to beat the Imperials and eject them from Skyrim, could the province of Skyrim remain independent? Or would it be wiped out by additional Imperial forces or even Dominion forces? Now, the big thing we need to discuss is what the THALMOR's goals are for Skyrim. As alluded to in the THALMOR dossier on Ulfric's Stormcloak, the THALMOR doesn't want either the Empire or Stormcloaks to win the Civil War. Their aim is a continuous civil war between both factions or some other type of conflict in the region. While the ALDMERI Dominion indirectly support the Stormcloaks by giving them a reason to fight the Empire, THALMOR dossier on Ulfric says, and I quote, "A Stormcloak victory is also to be avoided, however, so even aid to the Stormcloaks must be carefully managed." It stands to reason that the ALDMERI Dominion want a weakened Skyrim when they invade. If both the Stormcloaks and Empire are weakened, it's going to be easier to wipe both out. If one side prevails and has solid control over the area, then it will be much more difficult for the ALDMERI Dominion to defeat them. We also have to consider HAMMERFELL's success against the Dominion. HAMMERFELL is the third largest country in TAMRIEL, and they managed to fight back against the ALDMERI Dominion to a standstill. From that point, the Treaty of Stormcloaks was signed, and ultimately led to the ALDMERI Dominion leaving the region entirely. The people of HAMMERFELL were victorious, even though their country was left in bad shape. For the sake of comparison, Skyrim is the fourth largest country in Tamriel. While it might be easy for the Dominion to take Solitude, it may prove difficult for them to take the rest of Skyrim. Upon completing the College of Winterhold questline, it's probably safe to say that the mages there really hate the Dominion, especially since ANCANO killed the former Archmage, SAVOS AREN. Now, the Stormcloaks may also prove difficult for an occupying army, as they already employed guerrilla warfare tactics to defeat the larger Imperial forces during the Skyrim Civil War. The harassment of their troops may prove too costly for the Dominion. One of the reasons why the White Gold Concordat happened was to prevent what would have been an extremely costly war for the Dominion. In the case of HAMMERFELL, it might have been possible that the Dominion military was completely superior to the HAMMERFELL armies, but it may have proven too costly to occupy and control the entire region. Typically, you require more soldiers for a military occupation than you do for the actual battles themselves. It's safe to say that if the ALDMERI Dominion had problems occupying HAMMERFELL, they may have problems occupying Skyrim as well. Think about it for a second. Does the Dominion really have enough soldiers to occupy Skyrim, the fourth largest country in Tamriel? As far as economics, trade, and resources are concerned, Skyrim has already proven to be both a wealthy and relatively self-sufficient area. Solitude and Windhelm are both powerful economic centers and are great ports for trade thanks to their distance to the coast. Otherwise, you've got Dawnstar, which is home to an impressive mining operation. Riften is a significant source of both meat and fish, and Whiterun contains both the Companions and the Skyforge. My theory is that if Skyrim was independent, there would be groups that would want to trade with them from all over Tamriel. Blackmarsh could make a worthy trade partner with Skyrim, as that province of Tamriel is not declared for either the Empire or the Dominion. Perhaps parts of Morrowind would trade with Skyrim as well. Ultimately, I think a lot of it is going to depend on Ulfric's Stormcloak and what he decides to do. If you read the THALMOR dossier on Ulfric, the THALMOR had contact with Ulfric at one time, and he proved to be a worthy asset for them. There is a slight possibility that Ulfric's Stormcloak is helping the THALMOR rather than helping the Nordic people of Skyrim. At the same time, though, Ulfric was really upset at the resolution of the Markarth incident, especially at the Imperials that imprisoned him for requesting Talos worship in the region. If Talos worship is something that he sincerely values over everything else, I could certainly see him fighting the THALMOR if they did invade. Powerful governments have a tendency to fund rebels in an attempt to destabilize other powerful governments. The idea being that a proxy war would drain a country of its resources. Now, not to get too political, but as has been proven with our own history, the rebels you fund don't always remain loyal to you. When the values and interests of the rebels diverge from the powerful government that hired them, both parties usually end up fighting each other in the end. At the end of the day, I think independent Skyrim and Stormcloak victory has a really high probability of working out best for Skyrim. There are certainly concerns, however I see Skyrim entering a war with the THALMOR anyway. I also think that Skyrim is a fairly rich province of Tamriel, so I think they're ultimately going to be okay if they do have to become totally self-sufficient. It'll be interesting to find out what the Civil War's conclusion was in the next Elder Scrolls game, but I'm pretty curious to find out. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you like this video, please be sure to leave a like, and as always, take care and I'll see you all next time.